host, Rad Gantos.
I was just reflecting on that opening intro where it says, all things exciting as we get older.
Yeah.
As we bring this show to a kind of an end of a 6-year run, I'm reflecting on getting older, and all I can tell you is my knees hurt more. But other than that, I
My,
don't know what's exciting about it.
I don't know. The
It's
goal.
it's actually been a very very exciting run. And somebody was asking me the other day, like, you know, what what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. Knowing me, I'm not going to sit still. But it just felt like we had accomplished. For people who don't know what I'm talking about, is this show right now today will be the last episode of the Rad Life, uh, where we're interviewing two gentlemen on a couple of issues that I think are interesting and very much front and center as we come out of COVID. And then next week, for those who are listening, next week, if you've been a guest on the show, you've been a listener on the show, we're going to put out the Zoom link for anybody who wants to come on and share your thoughts on the show, whether you liked it, whether you hated it, you think we just basically ate up too much of your time,
Whether
whatever
you'll
it is
miss
for the
it.
last 6 years. Whether you miss it, whether I want to hear from you, because I know some people have been listening to this show, and I've been always surprised like I have friends halfway across the planet and tell me, well, you were talking to that guy the other day. And I'm like, you actually had nothing better to do with your time other than to watch
I
my
know,
show, but okay.
Because we
So,
all aspire to be Rad Gantos. I know your guest does. Everybody does. They watch your light from afar, and we wish, man, this guy lives the most interesting life. It's the Rad Life. Look at what he gets
well,
to do.
it's funny because what started off as the name of the show has become now a verb being used by a lot of people. And Saji knows this. Like, I'll do something, they'll go,
It's just the
oh
Rad
yeah,
Life.
well, yeah, it's the Rad Life.
The Raad
So
Life.
it's the Rad Life. So the Rad Life continues, even though the Rad Life, the show basically has stopped. And like I mentioned last time, I am really considering that we would maybe bring back the Rad Life on like an election season special or a particular topic of
Oh,
interest.
absolutely. The
that we
Red
can
Life's not
focus on.
gone. It's just not going to be on a regular weekly basis. That's for
Right.
sure.
I mean, you had your chance for 6 years. You blew it. I'm gone. I'm out of here.
So let's
So,
segue into today's show, which
yeah. So again, unless you have been basically living under a rock, and I think even then you probably were required to wear a mask and get vaccinated. So for
Yeah.
the last year, if you have not been in a coma, and there's been a lot to be in a coma about, but if you haven't been in a coma, you know that we, one way or the other, wherever you are, were impacted by something called a pandemic. And that impacted everything. It impacted our personal lives. It impacted our relationships. It impacted our business relationships. The way we conduct business changed. And they say that it takes 30 days for a new habit to form. Well, we've had almost over 12 months of solid. Actually, March would have been 12 months, right? So it's not something that is not going to affect us, has affected us, and in two particular areas that are of interest to me. One being the changing nature of business. Like, what has happened over the course of the last year? What are we looking towards? Everything from hybrid work situations to, what's the investment, the character of the investment, market right now? Is it taking advantage of things? Is it hesitant? How do we proceed? And to that point, I wanted to bring Saji on, who is a friend and an amazing expert in his field, who's from the U.S. Business Council, and to talk about that. And then at the half hour, we're going to switch to a gentleman by the name of Nick Safian, who is a developer and a veteran. And I want to talk about affordable housing, an unavoidable reality of life.
you say affordable housing, I feel like you just flipped me off.
Well, you know what? That's why you live in an unincorporated part of the county. We try to keep
That's
you
right.
out there in the back 40. Okay, but no, it's unavoidable. I mean, I think it's across the country. The concept of affordable housing, we'll talk a little about it with Nick, is misleading. The terminology is misleading. But we'll leave that till the second half of the show. So, Saji, thank you for being on, man. I appreciate you being on.
Oh, thank you, Rod. Thank you, Paul.
And Paul's going to spear in a minute, but
Yes.
I want you to take a minute, Saji, and for those who don't know you, give you a little bit of background about yourself and what you do, so we can set the stage for this conversation.
As Paul knows, it's very dangerous to ask a lawyer to step in like that.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
did I mention such as a attorney?
Very
Absolutely.
dangerous. I'll try my best not to be a lawyer when I speak.
I'm very particular. Actually, I'm probably one of the smallest. I mean, they showed up probably as elected or running people running for elections, and they have to be an attorney. But we, I think, have had the lead. And so I'm just.
Point they tell you, don't ever ask a question you don't already know the answer to.
Right. Well, I already know the answer, but for those who don't, I figured a little background would be good.
Yes. Well, thanks for that context. Yeah, a little background. So I'm Sajid Ganawarden. My firm is U.S. Business Counsel. And hopefully, the idea is that it speaks for itself. We are attorneys for businesses. We counsel businesses. We advise them on their growth strategies. Yes, that includes the transactional work. It's contracts, it's employment law, strategic planning, everything that a small to mid-sized business needs in terms of legal compliance and business development from a legal perspective, things to be proactive in getting in front of.
So what does that mean? What does business development from a legal perspective mean?
Well, it's interesting. If you're a company that's in expansion mode, right, and you're say have RFPs that you're competing for, or you have competitive applications or other sort of business promising contracts that you need to negotiate, there's always a legal component to that too. To you after the contract's signed. So we do a lot of
and what you're pointing out, I think, is that in many cases that kind of stuff is done sort of happenstance, or it's not really done with the guidance when it really should be, because there's too many pitfalls and potentially, and it's too steep a learning curve if you don't get the benefit of that expertise, right?
Yeah, well, Rod, it's kind of like what you were saying. It's also a reflection of the times that we're in too, because yes, generally speaking, business owners are savvy at what they do, and they sign a contract with that intention in mind, that it's going to empower them to really apply their skills and talent and their time. The issue really becomes what if scenarios. First off, is it really what if on the positive? What if we need to create space in this contract for those situations that will allow us to apply ourselves in a greater situation and get more return? That's the positive end of it. But what if also is the end of, like, are we protecting ourselves in scenarios we didn't otherwise predict of? And that's where having key advisors and the financial and the legal also help when you're approaching contracts.
So give me your take on, because how long have you been doing this?
Well, I've been in the business development world like straight out of college. I went to Berkeley, came back down south, and went right into the workforce. But then I went to law school, and I've been practicing law since 2005. City attorneys, municipal law, litigation and complex business litigation, and then my own firm, which eventually took this iteration of the firms from Santa Barbara and here in LA, Orange County.
So two questions. You went to Berkeley and then they allowed you into Orange County. I'm just kidding. Because,
I think it's because I was originally from here before I went to Berkeley, so we call progressive here. Yeah.
It's funny because if you're not at SC, you're from somewhere else. You're at a disadvantage in Orange County. But the other question I had for you is, given the fact that you've been at this for a long time, you have the ability to have perspective or look back and look at how things were. And I'm using COVID only as a benchmark, because for all I know, it may have already been going down a certain path prior to COVID. And I always will refer to people and say, look, in most cases, COVID didn't cause it. It just expedited it. Going down that side, people's purchasing habits and behavior patterns were different. So how much do you attribute, first of all, has there been a change? How much of it do you attribute to COVID per se? And how much of it was sort of coming? And what is it that we are looking at staring us in the face coming out of this period of pandemic as we start to ramp up a little bit more, but we also have a lot of debt. We've had a year of basically, financial support and unemployment and all this stuff. Give me your take on it, because I know you're right in the middle of it all right now.
Those are really good questions. So to answer it in a simple way for you and the viewers and listeners is that there are cycles and things do repeat themselves. Okay. First here in this place and time with the intention of growing and having prosperous, fulfilling lives, right?
Right.
And businesses, believe it or not, I believe this, is that they're groups of people. I mean, there's a legal entity, which is a business, but they're groups and teams of people. So the psychology of it has not changed. The challenge comes when in 2008, 2009, you had the fiscal crisis that happened, the financial crisis. And when that happens, then it shakes things up. Your expectations and your goals you had for maybe first year, third year, fifth year in the business have to be reshuffled, right? You have to reapproach it. When I say cycles, it repeats again. So in this case, it is a worldwide pandemic, unlike anything we've ever been through. However, same aspirations, same business goals, but you have to adjust them accordingly so that you can also weather the storm and then be ready.
Are there any particular industries that you specialize in, or is it across the board? That might be a good way to start this conversation.
Yeah, well, I think in the context of also time. So manufacturing, technology, consulting businesses as well. It is industry agnostic because it's businesses, small to mid-sized businesses.
Right.
And I said the context of time because I think back of the two markers, the financial crisis of 08, 09, and then now the pandemic, is that businesses are less and less siloed. And that matters a lot for the psychology of the business too, and how you're going to manage the business, manage risk, and develop it for growth. Because no longer are they siloed in a good way, because now teams work together in a more collaborative sense. An engineering company in 2008, 2009 can now be engineering / consulting / aeronautics, right? But you're seeing still the same gamut of issues, Rod, in terms of contracts, employment law, strategic planning, and then board and management advice in the middle there of all key financial advisors. It's the same issues, but now it's sort of the lines have blurred in some sense. They're blended, I'd say it's a better word. And so, which I think helps us, when I talked about before, the societal impact, the psychology of people.
Yeah.
We're better situated now than we were back in 08, 09 for crisis. That's why I think with the pandemic, you're seeing a lot of businesses weather the storm and rise again. The dust is clearing, and you're seeing that even though the economy took a huge hit locally, and granted, LA, Orange County can be a bubble within a bubble in Southern California, but still there is a lot of infrastructure in place. You'll hear from Nick later on about we are ready and poised to rebuild again. But I think it's because a lot of it is we are better at teams, better at workforces, better in the business community.
Well, I think the other thing that is worth noting is that out of necessity, we reinvented last year.
That's right.
Right. Some better than others, some quicker than others, but out of necessity, we reinvented. And again, imagine if we had to weather the storm of last year without the kind of access and technology and tools to do things as simple as what we're doing right now with Zoom. Like Zoom used to be, for somebody like you and I, we used Zoom for conference calls that were maybe, distance, couldn't do it in person. And all of a sudden, this small handful of us that were using Zoom, we're now basically like everybody else that uses Zoom. I mean, I remember when this thing first started, you couldn't get yourself a webcam if your life depended on it for a number of months. Everybody was out, right? How are we going to deal with the schools, et cetera? Now we're looking at people that basically are saying, well, if they want me to come back full time, I'm going to find another job because I want a hybrid work situation that basically gives me a little bit more quality of life. Now, I can only imagine the hoops that HR departments and firms are going through right now, because now you have a hybrid work environment that is at home, at the office, Zoom calls and visuals that basically a person is conducting business or communicating with a client from the house versus from the office. Is there a stipend that should go into supporting their technology at the home so that it's up to par? Certain companies, like I think it's Google, that is basically making sure that all their employees have, technology equality basically at home. So all these things that were never really part of the conversation before a year ago, and now are very much factors of what, like your business. Like if you're trying to hire somebody, you're now trying to coax them into being somebody that gets hired, but has flexibility in where and when they work and how they work, as long as the work done, right? So for us that have been doing this for 20 years and working remotely, it kind of like is secondhand, but the majority of people were very much in a traditional work environment, and that has just completely got blown to pieces, right?
Yes, absolutely. And traditional. So even though I did say, to your point, a lot of the silos have been broken apart, and lines are now blended, right?
Right.
It is true. Some industries are more arcane than others. My one being one of them. The legal industry is very sort of fixed in the way that they deliver. My model changed though in 08, 09, different than most of the industry. As you know, I have the corporate counsel program and that flat fee model, which opposes that billable hour model. And that is an example of how companies within industries have sort of forged ahead and thought about how to get ready for situations that are less predictable. You talk about remote work. That's also another thing too. Companies were starting to do that before this pandemic.
Sure.
Some were slow, to your point too. But we all had to get caught up real fast because of the technical necessity and the employee expectation of needing to have accessibility and to maintain their home life and their children and their family as well as their work.
Although it was funny, somebody pointed out to me the other day that it may be also generational. They said that it might be, that particular aspect of it might be generational in the following way, that if you are older and you have a little bit more of an established presence or reputation in the industry or your field of expertise, you may feel a little bit more confident that you don't necessarily need to be in the office all the time to show your face, because you have already an established presence that affords you the ability not to have to be present at all times. Whereas younger people may feel like they have to be in front of the people that are going to be, instrumental in giving them promotions, and that if they are basically remote, they may be at a disadvantage. I thought that was a very interesting take on it. And it was from somebody who was a millennial. Could argue that if somebody was older and they weren't really showing enough face time or getting enough face time, that they were kind of in a precarious position because they could be laid off, or they're kind of obsolete. So I could make an argument the opposite direction too. But coming from a millennial who basically, for all intents and purposes, has never seen a downturn, like, what are they, like, what are they, 21? So 8. So, I mean, if they were 15, they've been working for like maybe almost 10 years now. They've never really seen an economic downturn. They don't know how to navigate this. It's the first time. And so for them to basically be cognizant of the fact, or at least this person was, that if they spent enough face time with their boss, that they may be at a disadvantage of being promoted, I thought was a very interesting take.
I think you're onto something with that, and that position that she or he shared is interesting, because most of the workforce, as you know, the trend is now heading towards millennial,
right,
if you will, and even so, each experience is unique and different. But that experience you shared with me is the opposite of actually what the data is showing. Is that
that's exactly what I thought,
right? Which is interesting, but that also tells us that data is data, but the human experience is unique, and that's where culture and competency have to meet here. Can't find the middle ground that really works for the culture and competency of the organization. You're going to fall into problems that can really besiege a company.
So before we go, 2 things. First of all, what are some of the things that people should be, like, from what you're experiencing right now with your clients, what are some of the things that you're seeing that people should be cognizant about at this point in time, as they are basically either, trying to come out of a survival and mode into people that are maybe looking to buy businesses right now, or sell businesses? What advice or things that people should be aware of would you share?
Sure. I'd say, let me sort of gear this towards business owners and also people who are in the workforce, both. It can't be stressed enough. Just watch for the turn ahead, because even though the master ourselves such that we go back necessarily to the way it was, so to speak. What I mean by that is we have to appreciate where we are in this context and this time, and curate a culture. And take 2 things. Take the opportunity to revisit your goals, both as a workforce and also as a company too. Does this company match your goals? For the company, is the trajectory we set? It's because what's going to happen is the economy is going to open up and people are going to go, and the lines are out and people are going to race. But the reality is that the people who are going to succeed, the businesses that will succeed, reflective of where the culture and the community is going. So it's a great time to reassess goals. I'd say And the second thing about that is curate a culture of authenticity. What I mean by that is, you talked about the workforce. Make sure that you're communicating well within the vested interest of your employees and the company. Make sure that the goals are aligned. It's a good time to work closely with your HR and your human capital management teams to make sure that it is the right team, because the right team last year may not be the right team this year if your goals have changed. So this is the time to kind of approach those things, look at risk. And
the interesting thing about that is, for me, is that preparation that you're talking about, usually we don't, to your point, we usually don't have the ability to do that. We don't have the quiet space. You and I have had a conversation about this, but there's it seemed like until we got stopped in our tracks, in a way, we were just barreling down the road, head down, going faster and more stuff to put on my plate as the more I'm fortunate enough as a business to be still around at this point, because a lot of businesses did not make it through last year.
Yes.
You really owe it to yourself to get your head into sort of some growth mindset as we're coming out of this, and give yourself, there's another factor other than your own internal drive to do that is actually people with just the business, as long as you're trying to improve. Meaning, nobody's going to be critical about you right now because everybody's coming out of a difficult time. In the moment, you will be a few months from now. But right now, you have a window to basically like take a risk, do a reevaluate, reposition, reinvent yourself.
Yes, and I think that's why in seizing the opportunity, it goes down to nuts and bolts. What I was saying last is face those risks that you didn't maybe face before. Revisit your goals and strategic plan. Revisit you got to do the hard work of looking at your workforce. Is it the right workforce? Is it the right composite, the competency and the culture that you need for the next 5 years? And if not, work with people to offboard and onboard the right talent. Revisit your contracts, your insurance policies, your key vendor contracts, things that will make sure you're stable. Because I always have to say, Rod, you've heard me say this again and again, it's not a matter of if, but when. So get ready for it. And there's no better time that people to appreciate risk than what we've gone through.
But usually, I guess my point is usually when you're having to stop and do that, you're basically now that normal condition or abnormal, whichever way you want to define it, is not the case. Right now, everybody is in the same boat.
Absolutely.
Now, it may be a different size boat, it may be moving faster, maybe moving slower, but everybody's sort of in the same boat, that we're coming out of this period where now I'm not going to evaluate you on where you're at, but I have expectations of you to basically exceed my where you were coming out of this, because that's really going to be the true measure of whether somebody like grew through this period or not, whether individually or as a business. And I think as a business, it provides you an opportunity to reinvent. I mean, you know me, I'm repositioning my business right now, from a pure sort of we never really were, but we had a little bit more of an aesthetic component to our mission. And now it's more of a sort of a quality of life enhancement service.
I know.
We changed the slogan from, we don't design interiors, we design experiences, to now the slogan is designs for your life, right? Yeah. And it's a result of reflecting on this last year of, how was my work life? How was my home life?
It's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've done that. You're doing exactly what you're saying, and you're applying yourself in that. To borrow from your analogy, it's like there was a time last year to this year that it was a shock to the system. We were still in the water. All of us were in together. You're right.
Yeah.
But now the water is the current is picking up. The wind is picking up, and pretty soon it's going to set sail, and it's time to go. You're right. Okay. This is the time to seize on that, and revisit your strategies and your risk.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, people. It really is an opportunity. I mean, when we first started doing these shows during COVID, I used to say, you have a choice. You have either a choice to have a bunker mentality or a growth mindset. And if you have a growth mindset, under normal circumstances, you're moving so fast. If you stop, you're going to lose income. You retool, whatever. Usually, you can't stop the machinery without a cost to retool it. Right now, you can retool it with a very little cost impact that normally you would pay.
it is a critical investment period. It's not just that we can, but businesses are incumbent upon themselves. If they want to thrive in the future, they have to. It's not about surviving anymore. It's about position to thrive. So if you don't, then you will be left behind.
Well, and if you think about your market as being 100 competitors, right?
Yeah.
And you now are down, let's say, to maybe 60. Well, let me tell you, those 60 competitors that have survived through that period of unusualness, those are hungry competitors. Those are hungrier, more tuned in, more refined, more sophisticated than they were a year ago. And if you're not getting your game on to that level, you're going to find very quickly as things progress that you're at a disadvantage. So
I think
you
also
need to take, yeah.
Yeah, one more thing to your point, what you're saying now, which ties back to what you said, 180 on Google as an example of the workforce and how they changed it when quickly to remote, is that's how you can see, watch and learn from companies that are doing it. They were ahead of the curve. By doing that, they were situated for the success that they're going to be seeing in the years ahead because they were quick to move on that. I have a company that was quick to move into telehealth because they were situated already. They were able to do that. We had them positioned for that, and they were able to seize on that right away. So they were ahead of their competition. So to your point, Rod, this is the time to rechart the course before you set sail, because you're right. In a few months, the wind will pick up, and your competition will be ahead of you too.
Yeah, it's so. With that being said, guys, just find out more about what you can do by reaching out to Saji. Saji, give people your contact information, how they can get a hold of you.
Sure. I'm not going to try this last name. I'll give it a go. We'll see if people can spell it. Saji Gunawarden. But if you can't find it on LinkedIn, it's U.S. Business Council, which is reflective of who the businesses are.
And is that the website? What's the website?
Yes, it's U.S. Business Council, like an attorney, COUNSEL.com.
Not like a console, like a gaming console. Got
it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Although he's got some tricks up his sleeve, ladies and gentlemen. So contact him for sure. He knows his stuff pretty solid. Thanks, Sajid. Paul, can you see if Nick is waiting, and we can bring him on here for a minute? Sajid and Nick know each other.
Once again, Rod, success. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
I don't see anybody else in the room, but let me look here.
Yeah, Nick's supposed to be on.
There he is. Wait, he's coming in.
To be let in, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, from the very first show that we did until the very last one here we're doing, this is how the sausage is made. You guys get to see exactly the technical stuff. We've been doing this for 6 years, and I'm blaming it on Paul, but we still have some issues that we have to iron out.
I see.
That's a heck of a lead in there, Nick. How sausage is made.
Right. Nick
and I have a affinity for good food and good wine, so that's a different show for a different time, though. But I know you guys know each other, so I wanted everybody on here to say hello before we say goodbye to Saji.
Hey, how are you?
It's great I'm so glad you're on the show, Nick, and he's ending with you because you give a lot of promise, not just for veterans, but housing, and that's a great example of a transformative place to be right now with people like you at the forefront. So thanks for all you're doing, man.
Right, and we'll talk about it a little bit too, Saji, because Nick, we were talking about how people changed and the time to basically reevaluate and figure out what you were going to do and maybe get a little bit more depth to what it is that you're doing in terms of both satisfaction and impact. This is the time to do it. And we'll talk about how that basically became a focus for you during this last year relevant to affordable housing. So Saji, thanks again for being on.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Nick.
I appreciate you, my friend. I will talk to you soon.
Appreciate you as well. Bye, everyone.
Bye. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Nick Safian on with us, and Nick is another fellow Center Club member, and we've known each other for a while. And what Nick is doing now has been near and dear to my heart for a long time, and I think it gets maligned and misrepresented so much that it's unfortunate, because it's a very important and necessary thing that we need to start incorporating into our communities and start getting a different mindset to, both because of the positive impact it has, and we'll talk to Nick about that a little bit more now, and also because it's just a dire need. I mean, the topic is affordable housing, and for some reason, there's a commonality to that terminology that a lot of people, when you say affordable housing, especially in affluent communities, they look down their nose on that concept very much because they feel like it's going to dilute property values. It's going to bring in an unnecessary, undesirable element, people that are maybe going to be more like squatting. It's like 1 degree away from homeless, which is very unfortunate because we definitely have a need for it in our communities. So with that being said, Nick, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being on.
Thank you for having me, Raad.
And for people who don't know you as well as I do, Nick is a great guy. Tell people about yourself and how, what you do, what your background is. I mentioned before when I was talking with Saji that, you're focused on veterans, you're a retired former military, and tell people about what you've been doing and then how this shift into this particular focus.
Absolutely. So I retired military officer with 24 years of service. And after I retired, I got into my own business and became a contractor, a licensed contractor in the state of California. We've been doing a lot of construction in Southern California to the point where we saw the need for maybe some large developments to help in our communities. We saw a need for affordable housing because there was the lack of it. And fortunately, the more the housing prices go up, more the rent goes up. And It's not, and Raad, just like you mentioned, a lot of people think of affordable housing to be low income, Section 8.
Section 8 tenement housing projects, yeah.
Truthfully, it's not. It's more or less workforce housing. It's somewhere along the line where middle class people are not able to anymore afford the prices as they go higher.
Right.
Looking for a place, a clean place, a nice place, but affordable at the same time. And I'm not really sure for what reason whatsoever, because rent is not dependent on the market, but it keeps on going up and up to a point where these days it's not affordable anymore. So
part of it was like it used to be a lack of inventory in terms of rentals, especially in communities that were all single family homes and tracts, and that was kind of different communities, and all of a sudden you're talking about a high density, which I have a problem with, and then you're telling me it's affordable housing high density. They're just so let's just be clear, that when we say the word affordable, it's subjective. Right.
There's different levels of affordable housing. Of course, when you say affordable housing, it's not the market rate, it's lower, but right. Affordable is it? Intermediate affordable housing is approximately 30% less than what the market rate should be. A little bit more less than that, maybe affordable housing to somebody that's just a little bit over Section 8, or maybe on voucher system or some sort of a sponsorship by government because of one benefit or another. Yeah. It's approximately 50%. Veteran housing is these days becoming a little bit more sustainable because we have a lot of organizations that are trying to support our veterans. Right. But of the services that come with the housing is the one that's a big thing over here. Transportation, back and forth to medical facilities, the VA hospital, or maybe jobs. The lack of jobs also play a big hand in that, because when people get out of the military, their transition is very difficult.
Right.
Some of them are not trained in the private sector, so they have to be retrained. So then that pushes us to the education part. So part of our residential affordable housing communities that we're building have these services so veterans can actually get a leg up and enter or re-enter civilian or the private sector successfully. But we also work with, families that are, their income is a medium range income. It's not high. They need affordability. So we work with them. These are not homeless people. These are not people that are on any type of substance, alcohol, addicts. These are really good, hardworking American people that want to just life, and we're making it affordable for them.
Well, Nick, sorry, one thing, just again, to highlight sort of the importance of terminology and how it basically affects. You and I had a conversation last week about, what else could we call this? And obviously it's referred to as affordable housing, and that's how the industry knows it. And that's how basically everybody does the deals on it. But for those who are listening, if you were to exchange affordable housing for one of these two terms, reasonable housing or economical housing, if we said economical housing or reasonable housing versus using the term affordable housing, would you actually have a negative reaction to it? Because again, you're saying 30%, right? I mean, if the average rent in my area is $1,500 for a one bedroom, a third puts me down at a substantial amount, but it could be a market that's twice as much. Like the market rate for rent in New York or San Francisco is not going to be the same as maybe like Madison. So there's a relevant factor. It's all in perspective or in relevance to the area that you're talking about these projects. So what is the projects that you're working on, Nick, which are like a mixed use, higher, good sized projects? Are you finding that there's certain areas that are more receptive to this versus others?
Yeah, a good city that sees the benefit of having affordable housing, reasonable housing in their area finds it to be very good, not only economically, but also for the people, for the community, because you could house somebody that could afford our new development, at the same time find jobs locally, find the benefits of the services that we give, the education, some other items for their kids. So it's right. All in the city has to believe in something like this. The community has to come together to see the need for also, because most of these jobs, they're maybe a little bit less of an income than your normal jobs,
right.
are being filled by people that live outside or the outskirts of the city. So the city doesn't benefit from having non-city residents working in their city.
Right.
We need to open up when we need to bring the economics back to the city by building local homes, live in, affordable, reasonable.
So and my guess is, for those who don't know, that when you actually go into this as a developer or a builder, that there's pretty stringent requirements or certain guidelines that you need to follow?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the city puts so much restriction on zoning and high density that it sometimes doesn't make sense for a developer to come in and build just a few homes, make them reasonably priced, and try to either sell them or rent them. It just it doesn't
pencil out. Yeah,
absolutely. So you have to increase the density for somebody to come in to find it worthwhile for them to do it, but at the same time give back. So the benefit is much more for the community, for the people that live in the community as a whole.
Well, you've been on a couple of interviews recently and put out a couple of articles. So let's talk about those benefits. Let's talk about the things that sometimes get pushed to the back burner, but are really also positive impacts both on the community and the area that you mentioned and discussed, because I thought that those were very important and really don't get a lot of exposure or time.
Yeah, so most of the articles that we've been trying to put out there, part of our outreach program, is to make sure that the community knows about all the services that come with it, the groups that we help, the seniors that we help to be able to afford it. I mean, a lot of these seniors, they reach a certain age and their income is limited. And so they're not able to afford to lease a place for themselves, especially if they didn't properly save for their retirements.
Right.
The transitioning, and some people that work in the city are not able to afford these apartments.
Right. And are you finding that, because I mentioned this to Saji, is like, we're coming out of this period of pandemic right now, right? I mean, absolutely. The issue of affordable housing has been an issue that has been on the forefront, really, for some cities more so than others, but it's never been something that just happened, or, it's been around for a while. But I think there's been a little bit of an additional reality maybe that has happened because of this last year in terms of So could talk about that a little bit, Nick, please.
Well, with the pandemic hitting us, our past year has been a little difficult. We've lost the capability to work closely with customers, with employees. We've had to go over and beyond to make sure that everybody's protected. So there's extra expense to be able to do that. In addition, we lost two of our employees due to the stimulus packages, people making money than usually they do. So they take the money and take a break and maybe get on unemployment. So there has been a lot of government assistance that forced some of our employees to feel a little bit better by not working. So we face challenges with the cost of materials. The cost of material has been going up because of the delays in delivery or one thing or another. Factories have not been able to work. So, it's a combination of many things that hit the economy so much that just impedes our moving forward to build these developments at the same time. And the uncertainty of what's happening next month, people kind of tend to get worried, and they don't support something that, they see short term, they don't see long term. I'm more like a long term person, so I want to see us moving forward. I want to be able to get back on track and get these developments finished.
Well, the other thing that I mentioned this before on a number of shows, because it's like I said, this topic has been kind of near and dear to my heart. It affects everybody. You've got seniors that are basically maybe in an economically blighted situation now, more so than they were. They're one medical bill away from being basically on the razor's edge. So there's a lot of people. There's people that grow up, are born and raised in our communities, that have a vested interest in the communities, right? They are by bloodline almost connected to these communities, and those potentially are the future leaders of those communities that actually have a vested interest and a connection to the community. And when we cannot basically provide them with the ability to stay in these communities and work, in these communities, and at the same time be able to afford to live in these communities without having to basically, continue to couch surf at their parents' house because the value of properties and rent is so high. When we don't provide a reasonable housing or an economical housing for them as they're starting their careers, we lose them. They go somewhere else. And now the community loses out even more so potential future leadership that has a vested interest in the health and well-being of the community and culture and nature of the communities. We lose those people. So when we don't champion affordable housing, when we don't champion this as an option, especially in very high rent, affluent neighborhoods, the loss is more than just, there's going to be, I don't know if I can have that in my backyard. And we need to start thinking differently. And that's why I was hoping, coming out of the pandemic, I think there's certain realities that make this even a more necessary topic to embrace. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. I think what you're doing to cover the topic, to get exposure to it, is phenomenal. Your recent article about the benefits from economic benefits of affordable housing to the community and the jobs and income generation, I thought was spot on. How do people find out about your company and what you're doing, Nick, and maybe get involved?
Yeah, it's easy if they get on our website, vendavalcorp.com.
Spell that out, Nick.
V like in Victor, E-N like in November, D like in David, A, L like in Lima, Corp, Vendaval Corp.
Vendavalcorp.com. Okay. And what are some of the projects that you're currently working on? Because I know you're working on a couple of large projects.
Yeah, it's mostly right now our first two projects could possibly be in the Inland Empire. Just recently we've had a surge of people moving into those areas to get away from the higher rent because most of them are working out of their homes. So moving out of Los Angeles into the Inland Empire, and just surprisingly in the last 6 months, rent went up over 30% in those areas.
Wow.
And so landlords caught up on the idea, and they're taking advantage of the people that are moving into the area.
That's amazing. I mean, in the midst of all of this, the numbers just keep going up. The prices just keep going up. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's amazing. It's an amazing duality. Like you got this people that are not working because they're getting unemployment, and you know and that's a fine line too, because at some point, when is that not going to be enough? When does the support stop? But at the same token, you can argue that things are kind of sluggish. They're not normal, and that would have an impact to stabilize or even drop prices. But the exact opposite is happening, and it's going in the opposite direction. It's going straight up. Right. And yeah. So how what do you recommend to people that are receptive to this kind of mindset and thinking? How can they champion this? Because I think this is also very important to have people advocating for it. So how do you recommend people get involved in something like this, or basically, bring this more to literally their own hometown as something that could happen?
Well, we're definitely speaking with the city council and the planning commissions and the economic development people in every city. We're educating them on how this is actually a benefit for them, and to be able to support somebody like me to be able to finish these developments. So it's one city at a time, and I think they're going to see the big picture. And somewhere along the line, when the proven concept is there, they're going to be very happy with it. And I think they'll see it. There's a lot of organizations that definitely work with us on our outreach program and support us. So we're hoping to continue to do what we're doing and make sure those press releases are out to educate the public also on their cities and their regions.
Well, I think it's, if you are in this mindset, if you are a person that's looking around and saying, I got my own home, I'm comfortable, I'm good, but I can totally see where there's this need for this layer of housing in my community to make it to have positive impacts on it, and stop basically being just very black and white the minute you see the words affordable housing and looking at it as a negative. Like, really filter it through. I think if you're interested, to Nick's point, you can reach out to your city council. You could get involved with some of these organizations, especially now that are housing based organizations, because there's also you've got sort of your veterans, you got your homeless, there's a whole bunch of overlap that's happened this last year on the topic of housing, and this is one component of it. And for those who don't know, Nick, how long it takes to friggin' get one of these projects basically approved, right? Because people think, I'm just going to show up and say I want to put out affordable housing.
Yeah, unfortunately, some of the city councilmen are not the brightest people on housing and needs, and sometimes the tends to take 12 to 24 months to convince them that this is something good for them.
Right.
So we've gotten some pushback from some cities, and so now we want to contact the cities first and try to see if there's something to do with them before we jump into one city that might not want it.
Right, and there is such a thing as, by the way, copycats. I think what happens is once you have one or two cities that understand and see it and pursue that, it opens up the floodgates. Like, other cities are going, well, wait a minute, I'm not the first one. I'm not the guinea pig. Okay, so these guys down the street did this. It worked fine. I'll do this, right? For those who don't know what I'm talking about, or want to see an example of that and live in South County, look at how long it took to get the trolley system to happen between Dana Point, San Juan Capistrano, and San Clemente. The city that originally proposed it was San Clemente, and the last city to put it into effect was San Clemente, because they waited till all the other cities to basically be the guinea pigs. So yeah, people are funny people. People, personalities, and I was laughing and grinning, Nick, because from day one when we started the show, we haven't been targeting things, but we've definitely not shied away from calling things like they are. And so where you basically telling me that, some of the city council members in certain cities could benefit from a little bit more knowledge base, and I'm being very nice. You verbalize it in a different manner. I'm laughing because this show is still doing it on the very last guest that we are having on. We're still basically poking the bear, pushing the limits, and saying, hey, we're equal opportunity grillers. So the Raad Life may be ending a 6-year weekly activity, but stay tuned. I think we're going to be back on some of these issues. Like affordable housing, definitely one I want to do a special on. Maybe we'll even do a town hall with Nick. And then, we'll definitely be doing an election season one, because people who know me know that that's my sport. So I'm going to wait for election season for doing a little sport. Paul is laughing. Yeah, he knows me too well. So again, Nick, thank you for being on. I appreciate you, my friend, and all that you're doing. It is super critical work. And the fact that you are able to find a way to make it a profitable as well as beneficial, I think that is the name of the game coming out of COVID. I think anybody who's in business, there needs to be different layers of satisfaction to your business. It's not just about the money, it's the legacy, it's the positive impact. And yes, of course, it's about the money, but along with other things. So thanks, buddy, for being on. I'm glad that you are my last guest. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Paul, stick around, Nick, for a bit. But Paul, again, thank you so much for the last 6 years.
Thank you for bringing us this ride and for taking a chance 6 years ago when I said, hey, Dad, I think you could come up with some interesting content here. I meant for a month or two. I didn't know for 6 years. You have led us on an amazing ride.
You can take it from Paul. You never know what's going to come out of my mouth, and it could last 6 years. So,
yeah,
hopefully I'll make it entertaining at least.
I think we've got to find ways to rebirth this, reboot it back in the fall, reimagine it, and I'd love to get some feedback from people. What would you?
Well, and to that point, I'm inviting everybody, and we'll post it next week. But next week will be the last episode that we have, and we're not going to interview anybody. But I would love to have people call in, share your thoughts, positive, negative, don't spare my feelings about the show. I want to know what you guys got out of it in the last 6 years. If there were things that you would like to see us cover in the future, should we do some specials and stuff like that? I would love to hear from that. If you've been a guest on the show and you thought we were, Paul and I were basically the biggest pains in the ass on the planet, then, come and tell us. If you enjoyed it, come and tell us. We're going to probably raise a couple of glasses, knowing Paul and I, next week. And Nick,
so you'll have to come in. Are you going to be
cigars and bourbon, my friend? Come say hi.
Are we going to do by Zoom next week, or are we going to do it live?
We're going to do it by Zoom.
Okay.
And we're going to do it by Zoom because I want as many people on there as possible. So we're not going to turn anybody off. If you jump on, you're on. Unless you are trying to streak us or something like that, we'll keep you on. But hey, if you're going to streak us, that's cool. I mean, it's the last show. You want to come streak and scream. But
I hadn't thought of that. I may have to show up naked for this show here.
No. Bye, Nick. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. I appreciate you all. Thanks for the support over the last 6 years. It's been a fun ride, and we'll be back. Just don't know how exactly yet.
You have been listening to the Raad Life radio show with your host and age explorer, Raad Gantos, brought to you on the one and only octalkradio.net. Join us again next week as we continue our journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older.